it's generally easiest, especially when you are resource constrained, to allow existing service providers to introduce you to a regulator.
Hey, welcome to the FinTech Frontlines by Cora. This podcast is a collection of timeless ideas on how to build, launch, and operate a fintech in Africa from the most experienced minds in African fintech. In this episode, Marietta, Global Head of Licencing at Cheaper Cash, talks about building relationships with regulators if you're new in the market. She gives insights into using the resources you have to stay compliant with regulatory policies.
I think the best way is to leverage on existing regulated infrastructure providers. Now, what do I mean by that? It starts with, what is the relationship that this organization has with its banking partner? What is the relationship that this organization has with a mobile money operator? Now, I know the perspective is usually that there is some level of competition that does not foster that collaboration. I tend to think that from a practical perspective, there is room for that collaboration in the sense that it's generally easiest, especially when you are resource constrained, to allow existing service providers to introduce you to a regulator as a partner. Now, in the short term, does that compromise earnings? Probably. And that's, a compromise that you have to make at the very beginning of offering service, because usually when you do present yourself as a partner of a commercial bank, there is, an underlying agreement in terms of how to share profits from the particular service that's being offered. There may also be, adjustments that have to be made to the service that are not necessarily what the fintech wants to do in the very beginning. But I think if the fintech is resource constrained in the sense that it does not have the resources to hire a chief compliance officer, does not have the resources to immediately build, even just that first very basic iteration of a compliance program, wisdom dictates that use an existing regulated entity to introduce yourself. And that is also a safe way to play the game, because it means that if you go under the umbrella of an existing entity, you are unlikely to attract negative scrutiny from the regulator. And then the second phase of that is to start to prepare for an independent engagement. That independent engagement should come at the point where there is clarity on the service that is being provided, the delivery channel that is being utilized, the market or the segment of the market that is going to be served, and how technology is being leveraged to provide the service, because these are questions that you must be able to answer. The other reason why I think it's important to delay that direct engagement is that, for example, if the guidance from the regulator is that a license is required, other costs must now be considered, especially share capital requirements. Share capital requirements can be very steep depending on the license that is recommended by the regulator. And unfortunately, once that guidance process commences with the regulator, once there is that direct engagement, then the company does not have the option to, backtrack and say, oh, we're not prepared to move forward with this process. I think the other way to do it is to engage in reviews of draft regulations, to find opportunities to provide thought leadership, maybe organize some conversations around emerging technologies, offer trainings to regulatory staff members, create those opportunities for partnerships that are symbiotic but also beneficial to both parties, and then become that company that regulators think of when they want to set the standard for how they wish to see other fintechs operating. So really managing things from the regulatory affairs side. Things, but it's definitely possible. It just requires an understanding of what is the right approach for where the business is and the resources that are available.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FinTech Frontlines. For businesses that are bullish on Africa, Cora provides all the support you need to start and scale with delightful payment products for collections, payouts, and settlements. Learn more at corahq.com.